welcome back to the Zodcast. Today is Wednesday, April 21st. Hope everybody's doing well. Wanted to talk about a few things. It's been a couple weeks since I've done an upload, so finally getting around to it. And wanted to focus on some of the writing of Don Chaney. Of course, that was a picture of Don Chaney, and there again is his close relative, Mary L. Paradise, but I think we've talked about that enough. But, it's just one of those clues that keeps popping up with Don Chaney. And, just to state again how rare that is a surname and a place name. Extremely, extremely rare. And it just happens to come up closely in Don Chaney's family. But anyway, I wanted to talk about the letter that Don Chaney wrote a while back to Tom Voigt. Of course, you see where you put victim there. I spelled it Victem. And then the Zodiac spells victim Victom. And one of his letters, which was, always interesting. I think that's been talked about before. But first, going back to Chaney, how does he misspell a word like victim when he made the honor roll at Bakersfield High School every semester he was in high school, which included English? I mean, say, okay, he's just good at math, but made an honor roll every semester. You think he doesn't know how to spell the word victim, but yet chooses it to misspell it on a letter to a Zodiac researcher, Tom Voigt, in 2002? I'm showing this thing again from Bakersfield High School. Obviously, it showed Don Chaney, and then also you see Peter Sharland was on that same list, and that obviously was a good friend of Paul Avery's while they were both attending Bakersfield Junior College. But there again, you see victim, Victem. And here's a little note I got from James again. It says, "Hi, Drew. Here's something else I wanted to share with you. This example comes from the Zodiac's August 4th, 1969 letter to the San Francisco Examiner. Zodiac spelled pencil, Pencil, as pencil, Pencel. In Don's letter to Tom Voigt, he spelled victim, Victim, as victim, Victem. So they both put an E where an I is supposed to be. And you can add to that the fact that they both misspelled the word victim, and they both write their E's in a similar way. So in just this one word, you have three different levels of similarity between Zodiac and Don, James. That's a good point, James. Thanks for pointing that out again. And of course, James is the one that sent that incredible handwriting sample of Chaney's D versus Zodiac's D. But here again, you'll see there's Zodiac pencil that James sent, Pencel, and there's Don's victim again, Victem. But so much going on there. Why would Chaney first misspell that word and then misspell a word that Zodiac misspelled and then make it similar to the misspelled pencil in the Zodiac correspondence? It's just one of those things. My whole point is there's too much going on with Don Chaney to dismiss. There's just way too much circumstantial evidence for a guy that's connected from this case since the beginning and forever altered the case when he brought forward Arthur Lee Allen as a suspect in the summer of 1971. There's just too much there to be coincidental when this guy was involved in the case that early. It's just way too much. Here's another message I saw from Roy Piper, and this was an older post that he's talking about. On the video, his name was Arthur Lee Allen. He says, if you look very carefully, Chaney smiles shyly after he talks about some things Allen supposedly said. Very subtle but noticeable. And experts will tell you that means something. Also, look at those ears Chaney has, and then compare them to the drawing of the Zodiac. Similar ears. I would love to see what Chaney looked like in 1970. I would too. I obviously have a picture of him from 65, but there's Chaney from the video. I don't know. People could probably read too much into the way Chaney acts. His expressions during the documentary, his name was Arthur Lee Allen. It's more of what he says to me than how he makes that smirk. It's the different clues he throws out there about Arthur Lee Allen. Even when that video first starts out, you have Sandy Panzarella talking about how Allen would startle you, like the story when he used a knife trying to stab a bug or something crawling across the kitchen table. It's interesting where Panzarella says story, because obviously he heard it from Don Chaney. He didn't see that for himself. This is Don Chaney trying to convince everybody again about Arthur Lee Allen, including his friend Sandy Panzarella, and, who was also his boss at the time he came forward about Allen. So moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit more about how close Paul Avery and Don Chaney were to that production of The Mikado that was done at Bakersfield College of May of 1953. Of course, they were both attending Bakersfield College at that same time. And every time this is brought up on another Zodiac message board or whatever. Of course, this is my find. One of many about Don Chaney that I found. I mean, before me, no one knew Don Chaney was in the Air Force. No one knew, of course, that his grandfather's first cousin was Mary Martha Paradise. And obviously, they didn't know they were both at Bakersfield College at the same time. But every time that's brought up, they almost always forget to mention that the Mikado was done while they were there at the same time. And I don't know why people leave that out, but that's turns what you could try to pass off as just a coincidence to a what I call the genesis of the Zodiac case. But here, I'm just going to show you how closely they're related here. You see the guy here. Here's a picture from that exact production. It says, yes, sir, it are exceedingly sharp. It says Bruce Vogel as Lord High Executioner of Japan in last night's production of the Mikado. Stokes this nervous finger, not file, and professionally eyes the throats of Lupe Ornez and Art Keene. Well, I can tell you Bruce Vogel was a very good friend of Paul Avery at the time while they were in that going to Bakersfield College together. And just to show you what a small world it is, of course, here's the picture of Don Chaney when he was an aviation cadet at Harlingen, Texas. And this came from the Bakersfield, California newspaper in 1957. Well, look who just gets printed next to him there. Arthur E. Keene. Yes, that is Art Keene. His little excerpt that his parents probably bought right next to Don Chaney's picture. And Art Keene, of course, played the role of the Mikado. Just shows you what a small world Bakersfield College was back then. And here is, of course, a picture of none other than Paul Avery from the Bakersfield College yearbook, the Raconteur in 1953. That's Paul Avery at the top right. And below him is also on the student council is Bruce Vogel, the man who played the Lord High Executioner. And then also going through the cast, it says casting was completed May 6th with parts going to Art Keene. Of course, we talked about him as the Mikado. Jim Crutcher as Ninky Poo. Jim Crutcher was Avery's good friend from Burroughs High School. You can hear, here's another one where it says Water Boys will be Gene Meyer, Pete Charlin, talked about him a little bit earlier, Paul Avery, Floyd Redmond. It just shows all these guys are running together at that same time. Here, of course, is the clip from the Renegade Rip at Bakersfield College showing Paul Avery. Of course, Del Newell was on that staff with him as well, who knew Don Chaney's older sister, Patricia, very well. Here is a little clip of a wedding that was in China Lake, and it says Larry Bell will be the best man, and Paul Avery and Jim Crutcher will be ushers. So there's the tie right there with Avery. And Crutcher is a good friend from Burroughs High. So all of Avery's buddies were in that production, which is really strange when Paul Avery writes this article when he's working for the San Francisco Chronicle, and it says Gilbert and Sullivan included the Zodiac, where he speculates that the Zodiac was inspired by the Mikado from seeing it in a college production. He doesn't say anything about maybe the Zodiac saw it somewhere in downtown San Francisco where the culture was. No, he says he might have been influenced by it from seeing it at college. And of course, Avery never mentions anything about how close he was to this production at his college. The only year that he was in college at Bakersfield, never mentions it. Never says, when I was in Bakersfield, they did a production of the Mikado. Of course, he just doesn't bring it up, which is so strange to me. He never brings this up whatsoever, when I guarantee you at minimum he was probably helping out with that production, or at least he saw it. When I talked to Cliff Groff, of course, was Avery's friend at the time at Bakersfield College, he didn't remember Avery going to it, but he said it was definitely possible. He remembered seeing that production of the Mikado and said it was incredible. For a junior college, you couldn't believe how talented the actors were, how great the costumes looked, and all this kind of thing. But I'm just saying, Avery was so close to that particular production. He was in a play himself on that same stage that the Mikado was done on 3 weeks earlier. And then he writes this article about how the Zodiac may have been influenced by seeing that at college. And then he also speculates how the police thought that he may have played the role of the Lord High Executioner, and they were looking for different men that played that role in different productions of the Mikado. And of course, they never went anywhere. It definitely wasn't Bruce Vogel. He was a real little guy. Definitely wasn't the Zodiac. But just strange how close they were to that production in May of 1953, and everyone always seems to leave that out. That's why Chaney and Avery going to that same little small college is huge. But add on the fact that they weren't there together for a very long time, and it just happened to be only one of two times that college has ever done the Mikado. In its 100-year history, it's only done the Mikado twice, and one of those falls on the exact semester that Chaney and Avery are there at the same time. It's too much. It's too much just to be written off as a coincidence. And here's a picture of Bruce Fogel that played the Lord High Executioner. And what I was saying earlier in the Avery article in the San Francisco Chronicle, they were looking for, of course, people who played the role of the Lord High Executioner in the Mikado college productions, because they, the phrases that were quoted, they seemed to, the Zodiac quoted seemed to be from coming from someone that had studied the play and maybe actually played that role. So that's pretty interesting. There's one of my favorite pictures of Don Chaney, of course, from I think that's the 1961 Cal Poly Pomona yearbook. Looks really happy, doesn't he? I think he's contemplating something there. I'm not sure what, but he doesn't look happy. And most of his pictures look like that. I don't know what's going on in his head, but I would love to know. So sticking with the Bakersfield theme, I ran across this on the internet on a blog, and if you can find this on, if you just Google Button Willow and or Button Willow Clue or Button Willow Don Chaney, you'll find it. And it says Button Willow Clue. I have been researching the Zodiac case for around a year and a half now, and I always find myself coming back to Bakersfield, California. There are several connections to the area regarding the Zodiac case, and Willis doing my usual searching, I had been looking into a suspect that sent me in a roundabout way back to ZodiacCiphers.com website to look at Zodiac's letters. A thought occurred regarding Zodiac's button letter and how many times he went on about buttons that we get to the little list later, and the Exorcist letter, Titwillow, Titwillow. Of course, that's all from the Mikado. And what Button Willow is, it's a small town about 15 miles to the west of Bakersfield, so that's where this person's kind of thinking that maybe the Zodiac had some connection to because of the name Button Willow. And of course, the word button, and you obviously have the Zodiac's button letter where he wanted everybody to wear some buttons with the Zodiac symbol on it. So I don't know. I thought this was just kind of intriguing. I don't know if there's anything there or not, but it's definitely worth Googling and reading this whole thing. But this person goes on to talk about a club they had there in Bakersfield. It was actually of homosexual men, and it was called the Lords of Bakersfield, is what they were called. They were these prominent men in Bakersfield that were had kind of like a sex ring with young boys and stuff like that, and it was all covered up. And if you were part of that club, you would, you had some police in on it, and even people that worked at the Bakersfield, California newspaper. And this person speculates was maybe Don Chaney involved with that. I don't think so, because I think that most of the Lords of Bakersfield stuff was kind of in the, I think, late 70s and mostly during the 80s. Chaney was gone from Bakersfield since really the early 60s, when he, I think he might have come back a little bit after when he was in Harlingen in the Air Force, comes back for a while. Then he goes to Cal Poly Pomona pretty in the early 60s and gets buried in 62. And never comes back to live in Bakersfield. So I don't know if he's related to any of this Lords of Bakersfield stuff that this person's talking about. But it is interesting. And, before the Lords of Bakersfield, it was called the White Orchid Society. And I think that one went back a little bit further, maybe into the 1950s. So, one, I don't think Don Chaney was gay. Of course, Arthur Lee Allen preferred boys, so I don't know if there would be anything there or not. Probably not, because obviously Allen's from Vallejo. But Paul Avery was actually, when he was working for, after the Chronicle, he went to work for the Sacramento Bee, which was kind of a step down. His career was kind of winding down, but he went back to Bakersfield to investigate some of this stuff. And it was kind of like a satanic panic, like pedophilia rings and things like that. So I don't know. It's an interesting read. I don't know if there's much going on there or not, but it's definitely worth checking out. That's all I have for now. Please stay tuned to the next episode, and I think that will be a subscribers only. Thanks a lot.